To the big squeeze. Tonight we're going to be talking about what's going to be happening in the next several months to the end of the year with regards to our economy, our situation, and basically our lives here in the US and for that matter around the world. The big squeeze is going to be broken into three parts, and what we're going to be looking at is what's going to be happening, how it's going to be or why it's going to be happening, and what you can do to avoid the big squeeze. Okay, so the big squeeze we're going to look at today is mostly about money, financial situations, socioeconomic situations, all kinds of things that are huge ideas, but are somewhat easy to break down if you simplify. In other words, if you simplify a nuclear power plant, it's a bunch of hot rods that you pour water over to create steam. The steam turns a turbine. The turbine spins a wheel. The wheel basically has coils around it, which creates electricity, and the electricity goes out. That's the easy way of explaining a nuclear power plant. Unfortunately, building a nuclear power plant, running, maintaining, and everything else with a nuclear power plant, including the mathematics, is far more complicated. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do some really cool water cooler simplifications on what's going to be coming and why. Okay, some of the stuff you already know, some of the stuff you don't know. Congratulations for those of you who don't know. It's not really your fault. A lot of this stuff is not really something that they want to really publish or put out there in the ethos. They want to, if they do, they just want to bury it as quickly as they can. So let's get cracking and let's see what we got. The big squeeze. What is going on today? All right, as most of you have realized, the cost of living is going up. The cost to buy things is going way up. And that's one of those, yeah, no shit Sherlock statements that always come up, and people always say, yeah, but that's always been the way it is. That's true, but this is unique because what they're doing is they're doing a testing cycles scenario, which is they take a price down here, and then they raise it to here, and you're still paying it, and they raise it to here. Still paying it, and they raise it to here, and then they bring it down. They don't just jack prices up. They don't take a gallon of milk and shoot it from $2.65 to $12.32, just like with the gas prices. Gas prices are back down. I'm not sure where you are at, but before everything went crazy, it was about maybe $5, and it went up all the way to $7, and now it's back to $5.56, and that 56 is that's a lot of money. Especially when you start looking at how oil companies, well, second quarter, I believe they made something like, $4 or $5 billion. And second quarter of this last year, they made, I think it was $92 billion. So you can see that there's a lot of, huge amounts that people are, that these companies are making and that people are forking out. And a lot of that is because of, the disparity between the average worker and the CEO. Back in the 50s, the average worker, middle class, manager, nice guy, wife, kids, house, car, could send his kids to school. Mom didn't have to work. Great life. The ratio of money was about 3 to 1. And that's important because now the ratios have gone absolutely crazy. And I'm going to put up the first slide to show you a little bit of what crazy looks like. So this is from The Guardian. The wage gap between CEOs and US workers jumped 670 to 1 last year, study finds. The wage gap of CEOs on average is 10.6 million, while the median worker receives 23,968. Okay? And in the 2020s, it was 604. So it went from 604 in the last 2 years to 670, which is huge. That's a huge differential. And if you're wondering where the money is all going, it's going to the top. And there's a reason for that. It's an economic cycle that we're going through. Every country does that. Whether you're Dutch, English, whoever has the economic currency of the world, we know that they are living large right now based upon what's going on. Your reserve currencies allows you to live very large. Now, let's bring this back up for just a second. Okay, here we go. All right, so we can see the wage gaps. If you're making $23,968, I can guarantee you one thing: you're not living in San Francisco in a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. There's no way that's happening. It'd be pretty damn hard to live anywhere in the state of California for $23,968 before taxes. After taxes, you're getting crushed. This is the problem right here. When we see these huge companies, they're making all this money, but it's not distributed evenly. It's going to the C-suite, the very top 1% of the people that are there. With that, you're seeing basically people get decimated when it comes to what's happening for them financially. And this financial burden is going to be getting worse, not better. I'm going to explain to you why. The reason why is actually quite simple. For those of you who are around in the 70s, you remember inflation. And you remember inflation was at about 18%. And what they did with inflation was they used the lending rate, the Federal Reserve. The lending rate, they moved up to 21%. So inflation was 18. They beat inflation by moving the Federal Reserve's discount rate to 21%. And what that does is it doesn't allow you to borrow anymore. If you borrow money at 1% and are making 7, 8, 9%, you borrow as much as you can. That's why you saw a housing boom recently. As the Fed interest rate goes up on their discount rate goes up, you'll see the rate of mortgages go up, and you'll see less and less and less people because it becomes less and less advantageous. Any idiot could have made money in real estate in the last 2 years, okay? Provided you had the down payment, which a lot of people don't have. A lot of really good people. And it's really a shame because more people should own their own houses. Now, if you're a kid, where you're going to get an extra $150,000 is beyond me to put down for a down payment. But that's part of what's happening. Part of what's happening is that the lending rate is so low still that they're going to have to raise that up, because as long as inflation is about 7%, which is where it's at, we're going to have to go up to about 12% or at least 11% to knock it back down. So it becomes inefficient to borrow cheap money. When you have cheap money, it just gets blown. It gets spent everywhere. And that's what causes inflation to rise. When you get 65 guys bidding on one house and they're all rich, the price just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. When you got 2 guys that are dirt poor, you're lucky to get anything for your house. That's the way that one works. So you're going to be looking at inflation and their need to tame inflation with raising the Federal Reserve interbank lending rate, which is at 2.5% today, to something over what the cost of inflation is going to be. Now, that's going to raise prices everywhere. With those prices rising, you're going to see people suffering, struggling, having a hard time. And this always happens in the event of social, economic, and the progression of a nation. There's a guy by the name of Ray Dalio. He wrote a book called The Changing World Order. The book is freaking brilliant. It's 600 pages long. It's very, very long. But in it, he describes the cycle of a world power. The first one that we're going to look at tonight is going to be America. Before that, it was England. Before that, it was the Dutch, the Netherlands. Okay? And what we're going to look at is what is good and what is bad in the cycle. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to let you take a look at what a cycle looks like, and you can decide for yourself where we are in this cycle. So here we go. This is the cycle. Some of you might need to zoom in on your computer screens. There's 3 parts of the cycle. The cycles start the new order, the rise, the top, the decline, and then the new order. Okay? You see grays, you can see red, you can see black. Here we go. Now, the first part, think about America. We started 1776. Strong leadership. Did we have strong leadership? Yes, the founding fathers were a bunch of really strong men in hard times. And they had to be what? They had to be inventive. There was inventiveness there. And they They invented all kinds of new things. Were they educated? Yes, they had huge libraries, all of these guys. Strong culture, yes, American culture. Good resource allocation, good competitiveness, yep. Strong income growth, definitely. People were fleeing other countries to get to America for what? A new start, a new possibility to gain money, to have money, to grow. That created strong markets and financial centers. So here in one, you have strong leadership. We're getting together a country. It's going to be awesome. Inventiveness. This is what we're going to do. We're going to create these states. We got this idea called not democracy because we've had democracy, but we're going to call it the United States of America. We're going to have these really cool beliefs. We're going to have this thing called the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and that's going to give you, this wonderful educational system in which everybody can learn and grow, and everybody has a sense of who they are because we're going to create this American situation. It's going to be awesome. You have that. We have the competitiveness. We have the growth and everything else. Now we are then going to get to the top. And from 1 to about 8, I would say was about 1776 to about 1955-ish, right after World War II. We saw a real expansion until about the 50s. And then you saw some other countries, Japan, Germany, the ones that got bombed to hell and back, actually got rebuilt. And guess what? They started becoming powerhouses, and they still are powerhouses. And we are now looking at the top. The top, in my mind, was from about 1953, 50s, mid 50s, somewhere in there, to about I'd say about 1986, 87, when you start to see things going Gecko Gordon on people. At the top, you have less productive societies. People are feeling overtaxed. They're losing the competitiveness, and you start to see the wealth gaps. So pretty soon, you start seeing all these other countries mechanize, industrialize. They've always been industrial. Hell, England created the Industrial Revolution, basically. And what did they do? They become less productive over time because more and more people are becoming less and less able to work jobs because more and more machines are doing the work. So people become less productive. Doesn't mean the machines are, it means the people are. And in that trade-off between personnel and machinery, you start to see people borrow money. You start to see people, build factories. You start to see people doing all these investing, and then they don't reinvest. They just take the profits that they get from losing the worker, going to a machine, making all of this money, and instead of reinvesting it into the machinery, the people, the education, which they used to do, now it just goes to the owner, which we just looked at, which is, God forbid, a 670 to 1 gap right now. So you see the wealth gaps. Now on the decline, and we're starting to look at the decline, the wealth gaps, basically, you can see in number 12, we're in the decline. The decline represents large debt, printing a lots amount of money, internal conflict, loss of revenue currency, a loss of reserve currency, weakening leadership, civil war, and revolution. I don't care what country you look at, whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's Russia, whether it's England, France, we all have these curves, and we all see the same thing over time. Just like if you take a piece of wood and leave it out in the open and don't treat it, and you let the sun and rain beat down on it, it becomes what? It becomes torn apart. It becomes weathered. It gets eaten by termites. We know what's going to happen to that piece of wood if you leave it untreated. We know what happens if you never ever check your oil in your car. Yeah, it's an expensive bill. We know what's going to happen. This is not about ifs or buts or candies and nuts. It's about when it's going to happen. And we're somewhere between number 11, losing competitiveness, and probably number 17. I think a lot of us already know that we have large debts, so that checks off. So 13, we're there. Printing money, Well, we don't print money anymore. We just actually add ones and zeros to a balance sheet that is now computerized. And we've done a massive amount of that. So now we have trillions of dollars in debt. So there's a check. Internal conflict. If anybody was around last summer to see the riots, yes, we have a whole lot of internal conflict. As a matter of fact, a lot of people can't get that idea out of the head that it's not us versus them, but it's basically we're all in the same boat together. We got stupid people shooting at the other side of the boat because the other side is in the other side of the boat and not smart enough to realize that we need to stop shooting the only boat that we're in, because pretty soon it's going to be a real problem. And right now, you have to understand something. You have to understand, are you on what side? And if you said, well, I'm on the side of the Republican or I'm a Democrat, you've already lost. The side that you need to be on is the side that says, I am going to no longer buy into some of the different things that are going on here between good versus evil, because we're not going to be able to kick out 40% of the country on either side. That's not going to happen. 40% of the Republicans are not going to go to Europe. 40% of the Democrats are not going to go to Australia. It's just not going to happen. And this idea of what side are you on is a way for you to be distracted so that you don't notice what? So you don't notice this beautiful curve that we have here. This curve that says we have large debts, we're printing money, there's all this internal conflict. When we lose the reserve currency, that's when I expect things to really shift up or change. I thought we might see a little bit of this under Trump. We saw the internal conflict. We've seen printing of money for the last several presidents. Large debts we've seen for a couple decades. But the internal conflict and the idea where we might lose reserve currency is basically plausible now because we are the petrodollar. If you don't know what that means, go back to some of the old videos. You'll see what it means. I'm not going to explain it here, but look up petrodollar. And if we lose that, then we will have lost our reserve status. And that means all of our debts and everything else are going to be that much more expensive to pay back. That will happen if we have what? Weak leadership. Weak leadership looks like anybody who wants to say, our side is right, we need to take control. We are the adults in the room. And if you want to have fun, just to have an experiment, you can see if you are listening to somebody good or somebody bad. So if you're a Republican, go to MSNBC, and every time they say Republican, think Democrat, and see how you like it. If you're a Republican and you go to Fox News, and every time they say Democrat, you think Republican. You think that they're saying Republican. So if you're a Republican, go to Fox. Every time they say the Democrats, fill it in as Republican. Same thing, switch. When you go to MSNBC, if you're a Democrat, say every time they say, the Republicans, the bad guys, switch in Democrat and see what happens. You'll realize very quickly that you're being brainwashed into basically hating the other side. And the reason why they're trying to brainwash you to hate the other side is so that you don't see any of this big picture stuff. This is what they want you to do. They want to get enough weak people in there so there is a civil war. What? A civil war? Why would anybody want a civil war? Well, it's pretty easy to explain why people would want a civil war. And that is this right here. This is the rise, this is the top, this is the decline. The more red you are, the worse off you are. The reason why some people would want a civil war is because in a civil war, there will be a small group of people that will have great amounts of power. And whichever side wins, the other side has to do what they say. And for most people who have great amounts of power and wealth, it's not about being Republican and Democrat. It's about being powerful and not being powerful. So right now, ask yourself about who does the debt burden go to? Is it on the wealthy? Is it on the middle class? How much internal conflict is there in the United States? Are we in the rise, the top, line? Do we see a lot of internal conflict? How's our educational system doing? innovation in technology, military strength. How's it? Hell, we still got the most military. But is that going to be enough if everybody bands together because something big happens? How's our trade, economic? Take a look at this. Go through these and ask yourself, are we in the rise, the top, or the decline? Because if we are in the decline, what will be happening is that we will go right back to here. We will go right back to being in this cycle of basically a weak leadership, a civil war, and from a civil war comes what? A new world order. That's Dalio's term. I don't like the word new world order. That to me is Bilderberger, and that is Davos, and that is Klaus Schwab, and all those other folks that I'm not really in favor of letting rule the world, because I don't think that they have anybody's best interest at heart but their own. And what I mean by that is that no matter how much you yell at a deaf person because they were born deaf, they're still not going to hear you. No matter how much you want some of these people to have empathy and sympathy for you, they're not going to do it. Just like a deaf person, no matter how loud you yell at them, will still not be able to hear you. These people, no matter how many poor people, poor situations, babies in streets, things getting blown up, people getting blown apart, do not care. They see it as a necessary part of a socioeconomic experiment in which they are at the top and they will do whatever it takes to keep them that way or to stay that way. All right, pretty bleak picture. But yeah, that's why people would want to separate people and create a civil war, is because whoever comes out of the civil war is going to have immense powers to tell the other side to do whatever they want them to do. And if you doubt me, go down to the South, talk to some Southerners who have like really old grandparents and ask them what it was like in the South, say 75, 80 years ago. And that's a real interesting story. All right. So there's the doom and gloom. So what can you do to protect yourself? What can your attitude be to get through all of this stuff? I'm glad you asked. Well, the first thing you're going to have to do is protect yourself. And the first thing you're going to want to protect yourself from is actually the government. Right now, we just had a bill that was passed in which $80 billion is going to go to the IRS. $80 billion to get 87,000 new tax guys on the case looking at tax returns, finding people, and they're going to be going after the middle class and the upper middle class. Why? The poor don't have money, the rich have attorneys. Doesn't pay for them to go after the attorneys or the rich. They have attorneys. It's going to cost them more to get the money. Poor don't have it. Can't get blood out of a turnip. How intense is it? Well, if you want to know intense, Google military budget for IRS or what weapons and ammo, how much weapons and ammo does the IRS have? Prepare to be shocked. They're sending out applications to say, we want people who are willing to use deadly force. Why the IRS needs people that need deadly force, I have no idea. I know that they're under the Department of the Treasury, and I know the Department of the Treasury, they do, and they go with some pretty bad people. The Department of the Treasury, I got nothing but mad respect for. But they're going to try and pull all the money they can from the bottom to the top now. And once that happens and all the money is gone out, think of it like a tidal wave. The tidal wave, all the water rushes, and then what happens? The huge wave comes rushing back in. And in this case, what's going to happen is the huge wave is going to be a tsunami of crap. Okay? It's going to be fighting, bickering, loss. It's going to be heavy amounts of debt. It's going to be your side versus my side. And it's all so that huge clash and reshuffle the cards. And while they're reshuffling the cards, all the guys with all the money will do what? Away. It's kind of like a magic experience, like with Harry Houdini. It's like, how does he get the elephant on the stage? He makes you look over there and he puts the elephant over here. Look over here, right over here. And this is what I'm going to do over here. Just like with the climate bill. Okay. And the bill to reduce inflation. Okay. And oh, by the way, we're going to add 87,000 tax guys. that are going to be rummaging through everything. Keep a receipt of everything. Make sure that you are ironclad on your tax stuff. Get a tax preparer. Make sure everything is just perfect. Okay? Won't be able to screw with you. That's the way they're going to come after most people. All right? So what can you do with your money? Hedges against inflation have always been gold, often considered the best hedge against inflation. So is silver. Any of the commodities usually tend to run good. Certain commodities run better. Things like gold, which in my mind will probably become illegal along with silver if things get really bad. If inflation goes through the roof, they're not going to let through the roof until they suck more money. Once the money is gone, and this is my prediction, once they bring probably in about a year or two, once the money has gone all the way up as much as it could, as they wrung as much as they can out of the people of the United States, then they will try and take away things like gold and silver. And they've already done that once. For those of you who are curious about that, Google United States government recalls gold. History lesson on that one. For those of you who are invested, then you want a 60-40 stock bond portfolio. Usually the best measure for that. Real estate investment, REITs, especially the REITs, the trusts, great things. Look for the broader markets to do well, i.e. the S&P versus, this company that your uncle likes over here in Georgia. Income. If you can get it, great. Real estate income is one of the best ways to get through a hedge against inflation. Having something of real value is great. Bloomberg's aggregate bond index, strong, and leveraged loans. So if you can borrow at 6 and get 10% on your 6, go for it. Richer people have been doing that their entire lives. So the big squeeze that's coming is coming because we're going through a cyclical situation that all nations go through. And as you can see, the documents, it's just that simple. We go from the start to the top to the decline situation where you lose the power as the reserve currency. The leadership is weak and ineffective because it's completely split and fractured. It goes civil war, and then what happens? A new order comes out of it. A new scenario comes out of it. That work. That I predict in about maybe 2 to 3 years would be my belief system. And at which point you're going to have to decide if you like the democracy or if you like the idea of a dictatorship. Now, the extreme democracy theoretically looks like communism, but the communist country is completely non-democratic. It's just a word. I can say that I'm the king of England. It doesn't make me it. Russia can say that they are, a democracy. They are as much of a democracy as I'm a king of England. You can go the dictator route and go completely with like a North Korea, their leader, glorious leader Kim Jong-un. And he is a complete and total dictator, but he will tell you, no, he's not. You can see it. It's just labeling at that point. What you want is people to have the power. You don't want only certain officials, politburos like they have over in China, or singular units, like we have some sort of hybrid between a person and the military. That's not what you want to see. You want to see the people having the power of people. In order for that to happen, I'm going to give you a cheat sheet to tell what's going to be good and what's going to take us quicker in over the abyss. So here you go. Here's what it looks like for you when you're talking with people as to what this all looks like as far as what's going to be helping people and what's going to serve people. All right. The first one, are they interested in the individual? Are they interested in helping America? Are they interested in helping the Republican or Democratic Party? Or are they just interested in helping themselves? Are they somebody who's running for office? Do they all tell you that they're in it for the country, but are they helping themselves or are they helping, the country? Sarah Palin was just doing cameos, and she was also doing a speech to get her elected. The woman is nothing about if she is all about herself, and that's obvious. Mitch McConnell does not believe in equity. He doesn't believe that which should be done for the Republicans should be done for the Democrats. These are the kinds of people that you need to get out. Nancy Pelosi, same damn thing, okay? Which is important? The desire to gain wealth and power? In other words, for the masses to gain power? Or is it in such a situation where you have a small group of people, they have all the power? So they're not worried about wealth. They're not worried about power because they were born into it. Those are the situations that you want to avoid. You want to give as many people the opportunity to have power, to gain wealth. That's what we're here for. The next part is you want people that are going to be good at history. Learn your history, people, because if you don't learn it, you're bound to repeat it. So when you talk to people, find out if they have a limited history or if they have an extensive history background. You want to hang out with the people that have an extensive history background, smart, knowledgeable people. All right, their frame of decision making, is it long-term or short-term? Okay? Oops, I missed one. Multi-generational psychological cycle. Is it strong or is it descendant? So, in other words, are you creating the belief systems or are you living under somebody else's belief systems? Are you doing something based upon what your grandmother thought? Or are you doing something that you have created yourself? Are you striking out on your own belief systems and saying, this is what needs to happen? Because if you are, those are the people that you want to be around, and that's the person that you want to be, okay? You don't want, psychological cycles that were created 90 years ago screwing you up. You want strong belief systems. Now, if those belief systems are kindness, valor, honesty, trust, strength, okay? That's great. Hold on to those. But not at the cost of, I refuse to stop farming my farm with a horse. I mean, it might be cool if you're Amish, but if you got 10,000 acres, you might need a John Deere. So find out where your belief systems are coming from. Decision making, you go with long-term people. You're dating somebody, no matter how many times I try and tell people this, they don't listen to it. Don't look at the good time you had and the good time that's coming up this weekend. Ask yourself, is this person going to be a good time for the next 10 to 20 years? And go from that place. Enjoy your date. Have fun on your date. But ask yourself while you're dating the person, is this the kind of person I want to be around in 20 years? Because let me tell you something. Partying all the time can get really repetitive and really stupid. Is the leadership competent? Okay. Do we have competent leadership? This leadership situation is it weak leadership or is it competent? Not strong, but competent. Do they know what they're doing? Do they know how to pass laws? Do they know how to listen to the people? Or are they just out for themselves? Openness to global thinking. You want people that are open, not closed. Culture. You want them to be productive, not sitting on their asses collecting paychecks from the government. Class relationships. You want them to be cooperative. The richest of the rich, the poorest of the poor. They all get to work together. I can work with anybody. I can't work for anybody. Very few people I can work for, but I can work with damn near anybody. You want class relationships to be cooperative. You want to reach out between rich and poor, black and white, gay and straight. You want basically people who all want to come together and lend a hand. That's what you're looking for. Not divisive, not I won't work with him because they're this color or they have this sexuality or they're that religion. Forget it. I won't talk to that person. Those are the people that you want to stay away from. Moderate people. Don't look for the partisans. Look for the people in the middle. Trump is the only true candidate, and he's still president, and I wish Donald Trump was the dictator of the United States. Yeah, stay away from that person. completely, just like you want to stay away from. The only good party is the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has all the answers, and as long as we give enough money to everybody, everybody's going to be happy. Because that ain't going to work. It's just going to crash eventually. Prisoner's dilemma, I'm not going to go into. It just kind of states that two stupid people can do, a lot of good things together, but they won't do it because they're too stupid, and they'll just turn on each other. In other words, you have water and I have bread, but I won't share my water with you, and you won't share your bread with me. When we'd be better off if we just shared the bread and water. No, you'll take my bread. No, you'll take my water. Sharing, it's good. Practice it. Relationships, are you win-win or win-lose? If you notice that you have, win-win or lose. If you notice people are, playing win-lose with you and they don't care, that's a lose-lose person. Get the hell away from them. Balance of power is favorable versus unfavorable. Peace-war cycles. These people believe in war. You need to believe in peace. Summing up, your country is important. It is, you're going to have to be you're going to have to be extensively strong in a lot of ways. You're going to have to do that by looking to the long term. For that, you need to be competent and open to being productive and cooperative with moderate people who can also be cooperative with you in a win-win situation that would be favorable to peace. Try that again if you need to, because nothing is more true than that coming in the next coming days. The dynamics that you're going to get screwed on and the situation that basically is going to bring us down is the following. People who think that the individual is no longer important, they have a limited view and scope of what is going on because they are a descendant of somebody who is rich and powerful. Their thinking is short term, and they generally tend to be weak and cruel people. They're closed off to new ideas and new situations, and they thus are very unproductive. They just sit around doing the same things again and again and again. And for things to become interesting, they send out divisive words, comments, situations. Some days I would love to get into a room with Rupert Murdoch and ask him, what in the hell is he thinking? The most divisive man on the planet. Why? Because they will basically put up a whole bunch of partisan things and say, we are good, you are bad. Why? So that they can start a war. And then that war, it will be completely lose-lose, and it will be unfavorable to everyone on both sides and anything in between. Why? Because it's a freaking war, people. There are no winners in war. There are only losers. One side may be a little less than the other. So when you're talking about the big squeeze, you're talking about a pathway that nations take, and they all take it. Just like there is a scientific record that we have of what happens. You're born, you grow, you hit puberty, you basically get out of puberty. You're in your 20s and 30s and you're having a good time, and in your 40s and 50s, things start to hurt. 60s and 70s, hell, you are getting old. If you're not thinking it, you feel it. And when you're 80s and 90s, you know you're old. And that's been the way it's been for how many thousands of years? As long as there's been humans. As long as there's been countries, they follow this arc just like humans follow an aging process. Some live for a very long time, some flame out. If you want to live for a very long time, go with the green. Remember, peace is always favorable. Play win-win and be cooperative with moderate people who can also be cooperative. This will allow for production to open up. With competent long-term planning, you can become strong and create an extensive network of very important things for your country. Boom. That's how you do it. That's all you need to think about. That's what you need to be doing. Now, as always, I've ran over, and I apologize for running over, and I apologize for some of the little technical stuff. I go ahead and turn this off. Yeah, there we go. Final thought for the night when it comes to getting squeezed, or the big squeeze. The most important thing you have right now is create new relationships in which you spend your time and energy wisely. For those of you who don't know how to spend your time and energy wisely, right? Please go back to the green section and versus the red section and take a listen to that again. The best thing you can do in the big squeeze is basically create new relationships and create unity and relationships with people who have things that are missing that you can fulfill, and you have things that are missing in your world that they can fulfill, and start to build the cooperative, start to build the collective, because you're going to need those people coming up. Because if you've ever seen what it looks like when a country loses its reserve currency and faces its decline, it's never pretty. But you can get through it, keeping the right attitude, keeping the right way. Don't get divisive, don't get down, don't play win-lose, or lose-lose in this case. Do your best to be the best person that you can be. Now that you know all this, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. Always feel free to like, subscribe, do all the other good things. I hope this was not too intense for some people. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me through todd@toddhershey.com. And I thank you for your time and listening to this. Good luck.